to talk about Arabia in different periods, pre-Islamic, like ancient, then Islamic, then modern. From week 4, we will be discussing women and looking at women's history, in ancient history, in legends and religion, in politics and economy, and finally, women in art, storytelling, and writing. So these are the scopes that I hope that we can cover in these short hours. Starting with this, with today, we're having only half an hour. So I would take you directly to this small talk of what do you mean by ancient Arabia and what it covers. We need to bear in mind, of course, that in half an hour you can't tell the story of thousands and millennia of years. But I'm going to just get bits and pieces from every corner of Arabia and highlight the important bits. Okay, so this is of course, the map of Saudi Arabia. It is situated in the corner of Southwest Asia. It is surrounded, as you can see, by the Red Sea, Arabo-Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea from the south, and from the north, you can see that it is the desert of Iraq and the Levant. Put it in touch. If we go directly to the northwest, to the Mediterranean. However, that has allowed Arabia to get in touch by sea with Africa, with India, and by land with ancient civilizations of Egypt, Levant, Mesopotamia, and what is beyond. In ancient Arabia, we can talk about a unified Arabia, not until the beginning, the emergence of Islam. But what we can say is that Arabia has known different political and economic entities as all along its history, since prehistoric times. The earliest human settlements in Arabia is known to be situated in northern Arabia, north of Skaka, which is Al Juf area, in a place called Ashwehtiya. It dates back to 1 million years ago. It's we're talking here about prehistoric periods and remains. As we go along history, we move into another new findings. By the way, these days, every day you're having new findings in Saudi Arabia, as it's been open to archaeologists from all over the world. A new phenomena that we haven't experienced since it's only been experienced in the last couple of years. So in the last couple of years, we've been having dozens of, if not more, of archaeological expeditions taking place all over Saudi Arabia, in land and in sea, from all also periods. This is, for example, is a discovery by a mission of aerial archaeology to look into the human remains or animal remains in the Nufud, which is one of the biggest deserts in Arabia. And here they found, for example, a Homo sapien that date back to 250 years ago, and a remaining of an elephant as well. So it just shows that we're not talking only about human remains or settlements, but also we're talking about migrations. These seas have also allowed for migrations from and to Arabia, from all around its surroundings. Another discovery that dates back to 7,000 years ago are these very interesting mustafils that have hit the news in the last month. It's also by aerial explorations. They found stone structures that are very huge, rectangulars, and they use the Arabic word of mustatir for it. It's not only mustatis, but there are also some circles and some triangles. But the major structure for this exploration was the mustatil, and it's actually a Stone Age period of burials and certain rites that are not very that are still under analysis and exploration. And it's all been found in the area around Al-Ula, and it's been commissioned by the Royal Commission of Al-Ula, as you can see. This is one of the hotspots these days that is opening, as I said, all sorts of archaeological types of analysis to go and look for remains, historical and prehistoric. The remains of Paleolithic and Neolithic times settlements and objects are found all over Arabia. These include rock art and engravings, such as in Jubba, in Bir Hima, and Shuemis, all of which became UNESCO World Heritages, and more showing some of they show animals and they show also humans. These date back to 230,000 years ago. I should brought the mustatils before this, but anyway. Okay, let me move to another way of looking at history in Arabia. What I believe that defines the Arabia's history are four things: its location, its environment, fauna and flora, and its people. If we look at the location, as we have just seen before, between the ancient civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, the communication of their culture were always possible, and they lasted all along history up to today. We have the same pattern of relationships, but with different maybe levels of whether it's intensity. This environment consisted of arid deserts or the mountains. If we're talking about the southwest and west, we're talking about the long shores of that surrounded. Yeah, we're talking about the long shores that surrounded the mountains in some part, like in Oman. We're talking about plains in other, like in the west and the east. These open plains allowed, as I said, in addition to the migration here, we're talking about politically, it allowed for an extended unified rule, as we can see in Yemen, or Hadramaut, all these ancient kingdoms of Southern Arabia, whether it started by Saba, Ma'in, Hadramaut, Awsan, or Kinda, and later Himyar. The location made it possible for them to have unified kingdoms, whereas the city, the caravan cities we call them, or caravan centers along this caravan route took another form of political structure, which is called just a city-state type of governance. And this can be seen all along these are trade routes, yeah. But the main one is the one that goes from Yemen up to Petra to Gaza. crossing all the main cities of Yemen up to Najran, to Taif, to sometimes Mecca, on another route to Yathrib, to Madain Saleh, Hijra. And then from there it reaches Petra, Raqamu, and then to Gaza. From Gaza, it is taken by boat to Rome. So this is the ancient road, but of course there are other routes that cross with this main south-north route that cross Arabia to reach the coast, the eastern coast, and from there to India by boat, or to north to Mesopotamia. So here we are talking about a very complex setting of a relationship that has decided or defined what determined the political entity of what we have here. We have type of city-states. If we look at the flora of Arabia, that determined what we can say that determined its economy are certain products that they cultivated and invested in. Most importantly was the frankincense and myrrh, which grew up in and still grows up in southern Arabia of Dhofar and Hadramaut. Frankincense was used for religious rites, for medical purposes, for funerary practices, as well for major celebrations. I need to say that the importance of frankincense and the family of aromatics in general were markers of Arabia's precious flora that counted Arabia, especially the Sabaeans and Hygrians, for example, by Pliny, the Roman historian, as two of the the richest nations in the world. This is talking about the 1st century BCE. Here we need to bear in mind that frankincense of that time easily to be compared to oil. We can say that it's a commodity that was very light, very light and very precious. So a small quantity brings a big wealth to this trade, let alone the fact that Arabs were very good at protecting this, the cultivation of this plant by true and false stories. And we can go through that later on. Okay, if we move to the fauna, the camel, of course, is the main animal in this category. The desert sheep, etc. It is the camel that allowed Arabia to navigate the dry deserts, which with limited amount or even without water or a lot of food. The domestication of camels by the 1st millennium BCE made the difference. So it allowed for long distance trade, and it allowed for a continuation of it, for a big quantity also of caravans to take the journey. Before camels, it was the donkey that was used for transportation, and it couldn't go for longer than specific distances that not allow for these international web of relationship. If you say, so the geopolitical position of Arabia in its entirety determined its past and future, above all its economic activities, from trade to oil. When we come to the people of Arabia, they are traditionally called Arabs. However, they were not called Arabs until the 1st millennium BCE. The word first appeared and was mentioned in the Assyrian records of the 9th century BCE that referred to the people of northern Arabia. Now, the queens of Adumatu of the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, Adumatu is in Jowf, north of Saudi Arabia, were called queens of Arabia. So the name kept appearing every now and then, but there were disputes among linguists and historians.
ممكن أسأل سؤال؟ Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Mohammed.
Can we?
What's
Yes.
the etymology of Arab?
Araba. Because they were mentioned in the Assyrian records, so they were not. They were the word. It was a that was used, not the ain. Arabu. Anyway, it's a long story, Muhammad. Yani we can reside on this forever. I will not get also to any proper conclusion, because they went on saying the Arabs are not really an ethnicity, it's a language, it's a style of living, it's not a certain tribe, and so on. So it's not the homogeneity. Even between North and South, there were disputes as to whether these Arabs or not Arabs or Arabized, Ariba and Mustariba. So the debate on the ethnicity led to discussion of the tribal system and how it's distributed, organized, authenticated along history. The debate encompasses the myth, the history, and divided Arabs into, as I said, Arabs and Arabized, Qahtanis, Adnanis. So the debate continues until today, right? But we can have a discussion about that in our tents when we meet. What is certain is that there was immigration of movement of people between Western Arabia and Eastern Arabia, between Eastern Arabia and the coasts of Persia and India, from Central Arabia to the Levant and Mesopotamia, from Western Arabia to Egypt, etc. So movement was also part of the ecological changes of Arabia. Here we're talking about the myth that Arabia was isolated and it has this purity of ethnic purity and cultural purity and everything that is pure and not being touched by anything is just a myth. Similarly to anywhere in the world, let alone a place that is like in a peninsula that is surrounded by people all around it, and its people having in touch with everyone. So, and the migrations of the history also brought us to think of, showed us that there were huge migrations from different parts of Arabia to the north, for example, that created all the Semitic moves, groups that populated Mesopotamia and Syria and even Egypt with different groups of people, depending on again the arid situation that Arabia became or turned into through time. Okay, from here I have 10 minutes left to say a few things. This is just a short map, a quick map of what these different areas of Arabia entail in terms of history. For example, Eastern Arabia, or when do we start to learn about historical events, or when this area or this part of Arabia is part of a certain history? So Eastern Arabia, by the 4th millennium, we start to see its reference to its main entity Dilmun in the Assyrian, in the Sumerian tablets. Here we're talking about mythologies. We're talking about also from mythology up to real trade and commerce. But this goes on for three millennia. Yani it's very rich in also information. And here we're not talking about only Eastern Arabia was divided into Dilmun, into Magan, which is Oman, into Melucha, which is today's Indus Valley, the civilization of Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, and of course Somar, which is southern Iraq. So this is a group of This is an area that is connected to each other culturally and historically. And if you go step by step in history, that will take really, it's very interesting as well. Just to say that there were many important towns that flourished in eastern region, such as Jerha, Thaj, Qatif. We're talking about Uqair. We're talking about Al-Hassa. Yeah, in different periods of time, especially by the as we come closer to the zero age of BCE, then we have more history and more information. Southern Arabia, from the first millennium BCE, we have inscriptions that cover the whole history of thousands and thousands of tablets that tell the story and the history of the Southern Arabian kingdoms that populated Yemen of today, Yemen and Hadramaut, including the Hadramaut, which is the full south and north up to Qaryat al-Faw, which is in Saudi Arabia today, including Najran, Jazan, Asir, Jarash. All of these southwest Saudi Arabia and Yemen, they also compose or form a unity by itself. Northern Arabia, starting from Median, from the first millennium BCE up to the 9th century of first mention of Arabs, up to 8th and 7th century of Arabian queens of Adumatu. And these are for the queens that we're going to talk about when we come to when we reach Al-Jawf in our first flight. And then the northwest of Arabia, here we come to the Dan al-Ula, starting from the 6th century BCE until the 1st BCE. That includes Taima, which became the seat of the last Babylonian king Nabonidus, and who left us also good record of the history of Northwest Arabia. And then we have Al-Ula, which is the Dan and the civilization of Lihyan. It's not here, Lihyan. And then we have Higra with the Nabateans, the Nabataean city of the important kingdom of the Nabateans. Western Arabia also includes Yathrib, Khaybar, Mecca, and Taif. These cities that were flourished at the time, just the pre-Islamic period. Here I was going through I wanted to go through the map of Eastern Arabia. We mentioned all of that. These are, I should have showed you these maps when I was talking about the Eastern Arabia. This is Delmoun Magan. As you can see, the distance between the Indus Valley and the Eastern Arabia is not that far. If you're going by coast, close to the coast, which allowed a very rich exchange to take place between these places. This is a quick image of Delmunic burials. These burials and mounds are found also in Kharj in south of Riyadh. So there is an extension of this civilization. This is a map that is showing Ptolemy's map that shows the earliest reference to Mecca in the name of Makuraba in its same place. And there are many other towns and entities that this map of 2nd century CE presents. Okay, here we're talking about Queens of Arabia, the Lihyanites, and the Nabateans, and this is just part of their civilization. I wanted to say a few things about, we have 5 minutes. it's important just to say something about who the Lahyanites were. It's one of the Arab kingdoms that flourished in Al-Ula. It was called Dedan. Dedan is the name of the town, but Dedan also the name of a kingdom that predated the Lahyanites, and then they were merged together. And we have a list of kings of Dedan and list of kings of Lahyan, who date back from the 6th century BC. When we go to Al-Ula, we're going to see a lot of this civilization. This is, for example, a famous lion tomb that belonged to the Lahyanites, who flourished in Dedan or in Al-Ula until 24 BCE, when they were overtaken by the Nabateans. What is important about the Lahyanites is that the remaining of the civilization, or the remains, are very interesting, and you're going to see them in the Museum of Al-Ula. I think they are in Al-Ula Museum, or maybe in Riyadh Museum, the big statues of their kings. Something that has been done, some analogies to them with the faith, with the Egyptians. And there are, of course, a very important relationship between the Egyptians and during the time of Ramses, I think the second, there were some foundings in Taima that refer to certain connection. This is the writing of the Rahna. Of course, these kingdoms, they have all their own scripts that we can read, and we can find out, find out a lot about their inner social and economic and religious structures that we will be talking a lot about later. I think running out of time. Is there any way? I think well, when it comes to Nabateans, I need to have maybe a lot of more time to do that. I'll stop here, and we will refer to Nabateans when I talk about the Nabataean women. How about that? Any questions? I'll stop the share.
Thank you, Hatoon. This was very, very interesting.